Today is June the 28th, 2023. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program here in the library. With me today is Lorinda Schrammel, who served as the Director of Talent Development at OSU for almost 10 years, from 2012 to 2021.
That's correct.
We are in the Edmond Lowe Library here on campus, and this interview will be part of the Stories from Oklahoma State University Oral History Collection, and will focus on Pete's Pet Posse. By way of context, Pete's Pet Posse, OSU's pet therapy program, was established in 2013 as part of the university's commitment to being America's healthiest campus, and it's celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. P3, as it's often referred to, supports the emotional wellness of students, staff, and faculty, and has grown beyond the OSU Stillwater campus. While it takes a team to get such an initiative off the ground, the involvement and support of Ann Hargis, former first cowgirl, was and continues to be instrumental in its success. Linda and her furry friend Evie was part of the inaugural P3 class in 2013.
Yes.
So with all that, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into the pet therapy program, let's learn a little bit about you. Start wherever you like.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Oklahoma City. Went to school at Baylor University, so I'm not an official OSU alum, but I graduated from Baylor and moved back to Oklahoma because that's where I'm from. Married a gentleman from this area, and so I've been around the Stillwater area for a long, long time. And in 2012, I was fortunate enough to join OSU Human Resources Department. And I had been involved in training and development for, at that point, probably 17 years-ish, something like that. So I've been doing this a long time, and so OSU had a need. They'd had training at one point. Someone left, and they hadn't really filled a position, and so they wanted to revive that for staff and faculty purposes. And so I was selected, and I was thrilled. And I was, for the most part, a one-woman department at the beginning. I had a part-time student employee that I shared with another unit within Human Resources. So, and she was wonderful, but she just was a student worker, and she was, didn't have a lot of hours to give, and then she was split on that. So, but together we kind of knocked it out. She had been on staff in Human Resources for a while, so luckily she knew some of the things I didn't know, and was very helpful. She came on board with me full time after she graduated, so it was nice. So the department started to grow, and we were serving all of the staff, mainly staff, but faculty are always invited to everything that we would have here. And so as we needed to serve that population, our department grew. And I loved my time here. It was absolutely fabulous. And shortly after I'd been here about not even a year, 2013, the summer of 2013, Kendria Cost sent a picture to all of the HR staff asking if anyone wanted to adopt a dog. And it was the most precious picture of this dog. And I hadn't been looking to adopt a dog, but I'd been without it. I've always had a dog, and I had been without a dog for almost a year. And so I just thought, well, I might as well go meet this dog. And the interesting story about Evie is she was one of the dogs that had been taken in by the OSU Veterinary Hospital after the tornado in Shawnee, Oklahoma, that same summer. And OSU Vet Hospital has served as an overflow for all the dogs that were misplaced during that tornado. It was a very big tornado in Shawnee that year. And so she had come in, and she was covered in fleas and ticks, and she had heartworm. She was in pretty bad shape. And they nursed her back, but they didn't want to send her back to Shawnee because by that point everyone had fallen in love with her. She was just that kind of a dog. And so Kendria sent out this picture and said, we need to help them adopt this dog. And so my supervisor at the time was the Chief Human Resources Officer, Jamie Payne, and she said, let's go meet this dog. She knew that the Pete's Pet Posse was an idea that had been kind of talked about, but it was in no way, shape, or form a program at that point. And so I went to meet Evie, and we both fell in love with her, but Jamie didn't need a dog, and I loved her. I thought she was the best. So a couple of days later, she came home with me on July 5th of 2013. And as I'm walking out with my dog, Kendria said, we've kind of identified that she might be great for this new Pete's Pet Posse program, so just keep that in mind. And it was just kind of a side comment. I was like, okay, yeah, great. Went about my business with my new dog, and it was wonderful. And then a few weeks later, Kendria said, remember I talked to you about that posse program? I think we're going to start with Evie and Kendria's dog, Charlie, and just start getting them kind of used to the training and, kind of let them be our guinea pigs. And so we had a trainer that was a vet student that was a dog trainer, and she trained Evie and Charlie to at least have manners. And they were both really good dogs, but she just needed to teach them, some basic commands because there was no program. But Mrs. Hargis had in her head, we need a program. She'd had a posse dog visit camp, not a posse dog, but a therapy dog visit campus. And she saw how everyone wanted to pet the dog and see the dog, and she kind of got an idea in her head, and she's wanted to get an idea and go after it. And so Charlie and Evie and were kind of the first dogs on campus, started kind of feeling out if this was going to work, and then got a few other dogs, including Mrs. Hargis's dog Scruff, and a few other dogs, and we by then they'd kind of put all the pieces together to have this first class of Pete's Pet Posse. And we trained in the evenings, and you first learn, you earn the Canine Good Citizen. And that is a certification for the dogs, and it really is basic commands. Sit, stay, don't eat stuff off the ground, heel, just basic commands. And they have to pass this. And they do it in tandem with their partner, who is their human partner. Mm-hmm. And so we are a team, and so we do everything together. And I can't hand my dog off to someone else to take them around when they are working in their therapy dog capacity. So we train together and we work together. And so all of the dogs in the first class finally passed the Canine Good Citizen. I won't mention which dog was the last to achieve that. It wasn't Evie, but we won't talk names. But everyone finally passed. And then the next level was this therapy dog certification. And that was a little bit more intense training that we all did together. We train as a group, so the dogs are used to other dogs, even though they don't interact when they're working. They need to be used to people and other things happening around them. Therapy dogs are never just alone with someone, they're always out in public usually, and they're always with their handler. And so all the dogs passed the therapy dog certification, which was a pretty big deal for all these dogs. So I believe we had 8 in our initial class, and they were from different places all over campus. And so then the campus had to get used to having dogs, going in the buildings, going with me. Evie would come to me to my training classes since I was over talent development. That's the training capacity on this campus. And so Evie would come to me sometimes with classes. Sometimes if they were longer, it didn't work because she'd want to go out and do her business or just go out and see people. And I had the responsibility of training. But she would come to me some of my shorter classes. And I think that's where, people just got used to having dogs on campus. And so it was magnificent, and it just grew and grew and grew from there.
Initially, was there any pushback?
There was some pushback. I think a lot of the initial pushback was people that have allergic reactions to animals, mm-hmm. and they didn't really want them around or inside buildings. And so that was a little bit of pushback. And then I think there's, we always think that everyone embraces animals like we do in the United States. And we have an international community on this campus. We have lots of people from all over the world, and they don't all have the same, experiences with animals. And so there was a little bit of, I don't know if I would say pushback, but maybe fear that I don't know, why is there a dog, in the student union, and why am I to pet it? And some countries, they have very small dogs, and we have larger dogs in the program. We have all sizes of dogs. We have a lot of larger dogs too. My dog was larger. And, I think there's a little fear, and some would still, to keep their distance, but others were very curious campus, even though they might have been fearful. I had a young lady that told me she was from the Far East, and she said, I've never petted a dog that is this large. And she was really scared, but she said, I want to pet this dog. She looks so friendly. And it made me so happy that she would want to experience that. She didn't let her fear hold her back. And there were others that as we would come on the sidewalk, they might cross to the other side of the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. And so it was just, I think it was just, just a comfort level. Some were fearful. Some may have whatever reason they don't want to be around animals. And that's fine. We respect that. We never force a dog on anyone. And so we just tried to ease into it. And we tried to be respectful of people that didn't want us around. And I think after they learned that it wasn't a forced thing, it was an optional thing, and you could enjoy it to whatever level you felt comfortable, then I think people kind of gave us a little space to operate and could see the good we were doing.
What about from the facilities management side of things?
Yeah, my dog happened to be a dog that sheds, and so she would leave little deposits of black fur everywhere she went. And I always tried to go behind as we were cleaning up at the end of our, a visit or something. And I would try to clean up because I just didn't want to leave dog fur everywhere that my dog was responsible for. I don't know if everyone did that. I don't remember ever having a problem, but oftentimes those that were responsible for facilities wanted to come pet the dogs too, and they loved it. And they were like, it's just like cleaning up after anything else. We don't mind. They were very gracious to us. I never ever had a facilities person complain to me. Now they may have complained to the program, but I don't ever remember being, notified, hey, make sure you clean up after yourself. So I don't know that there was any complaints, but I think most of us try to be respectful. If we had a dog that shedded like I did, we tried to, be cognizant and respectful and clean up a little bit. I couldn't get on all the corners, but I would do the best I could. Just because, they were nice enough to let us hang out there. We should, be respectful and not make it a worse job for them in the end.
Were there some buildings that you just didn't take them in?
There was, or maybe a certain wing of a building. And that was usually tied to, we knew that someone had an allergy or did not want dogs for whatever reason in their area. And we were very respectful of that. And so I remember as they were constructing a new building on campus, there was a couple of people that didn't want the dogs, and we had a dog in that college. And so we just made it where the people that didn't want to be around the dogs were on an opposite part of the building than the person that actually had the dog. And then whenever a new dog was chosen, if they were chosen from that college, we just had to make sure that they were located in a place that they didn't infringe on the preferences of other people. And so I think for the most part, it was just being respectful of each other, and it seemed to work out very well.
So you mentioned that colleges would choose. So if two people or more, do you know what that process?
Yeah, the college, they have to get when an employee wants to have their dog in the program, they have to apply, and they take applications in August and September. But they have to get approval through their college that that they're okay with you participating, and so their supervisor signs off. But also they're making sure the college is okay to having a dog in the facility. And so once it's been signed off on, is that we've done all the checks and balances internally to make sure that we're covered. And then once it's an application process, and so as they are, when everyone that applies gets to go through an interview, and those interviews are extensive. There's several interviews. There's just an interview like we're talking today with the handler, a little bit about what their desire, why they want to be in the program, their interests, things like that. How much capacity do they have, to take dogs to events or meet and greets, whatever, things like that. And then there's an interview with the dog present, so everyone gets to see how the dog behaves around people, because it's important. There's oftentimes we go to events where there's lots of people. And then the dog actually gets interviewed with the handler by one of the veterinarians at the OSU College of Veterinary Medicine, because we just want to make sure that they have the right behavior, that they don't freak out, and that they are well. We want to make sure that they are well. It's a well check as well as a personality around dogs. And so they're the experts in the field, and so they kind of know things about different breeds that we might not know just as a general public. And so they're really good to get an interview there too. And so because when you're in the posse, you never know how someone's going to pet a dog or pull a dog's tail or accidentally, sit on its leg when it's sitting on the floor. You just never know how the dog is going to react. And the vets there are really good about recognizing those things. So it's an extensive process. And then from all those interviews, usually 10 to 12 are chosen for each class. Now I know a recent class had 20 because they were a little behind because of COVID. And so they were trying to make up for that. And also we've had some dogs that their families have moved, or they have reached a limit where they're no longer participating, or like in my case, my dog passed away. And so, they had to fill some holes that were left. And so it's such a robust program now. They have so many things that they are asked to participate in. You've got to have a lot of dogs. So it's an interview process. But they always make sure that it has been approved within the college or within the department before they're even allowed to interview.
Are there some that doesn't make it through all those
yes.
steps?
And sometimes it's the handler realizes this is probably not going to work the way I had envisioned it. So sometimes the handler will just withdraw because it's not working. And then sometimes, if you get a dog that's terrified of people, that's probably not going to be an ideal candidate to be in the posse program. And you don't know that until you get them around a lot of people. Now, that may be very comfortable with your family, even a large family, but if they get around a lot of strangers and they get nervous or they behave strangely, then that's probably not going to be the best program for them to serve in. And so, we've had some that have been, have self-realized that maybe this is not the best. And then we've had others that have said, maybe you need to wait. Now, sometimes it's been a very young dog and they need to be at least a year old just so they're not in puppy phase. And so sometimes it's come back in a year when your dog's a little older and they maybe behave a little bit differently. And that's worked out for some too. So it's really and that's why they do so many interviews, because you just want to see the snapshots of the dog in various situations to make sure this is going to be a good fit. Yeah.
So your 8, did they stay, all 8 stay together?
All 8 stayed together for our training. They all graduated, and then because it was new and we had only 8 dogs, we were busy. And then there was a couple of our dogs in that first class that their handlers didn't have a lot of capacity to do meet and greet. So I remember Evie and Charlie and a couple of the others, Disco comes to mind, that we did a lot of visits because it was new and everyone was excited to pet a dog, and it was fun. It really was fun, but it was a lot in addition to your regular work duties to also have to take an hour to go here or, stay after and go for a 2-hour event after, you get off work. And so at first with only 8 dogs and it being new and exciting, it was really busy. But for the most part, we stayed together. And then we had one of the dogs early on that passed away it wasn't that long after they had completed the program. It just suddenly got ill and passed away. It was so, so sad. And then we had another one that their handler moved. And so we were down to 6 in our original class. I would say within a year or two of completing. I don't know the timeline exactly on that, but it seems like it was in the first year or two that both those things occurred. So, but luckily we were starting to get ready for the next class so we could gear up to have more training and get more dogs in the program. And that's where they started doing it every year. So we could always make sure we had X number of dogs on campus.
So that might not have been the plan from the get-go.
Yeah, I don't know that they really thought and how many we would need. And I think once we realized that we stayed very busy, that we needed to have more dogs. And, I don't know if they have a number in mind because it just grows and grows. And I don't know if they decided this is the perfect number or we wait and see. Because it's just been so popular and it continues to be so popular that they just want to make sure that everyone's needs are met that they can.
So on an average week, how many hours would you
spend
doing?
Yeah, it kind of depended. So when it was during either the fall or the spring semester, I would say that if Evie would probably do at least 2 visits initially, at least 2, maybe 3. As we got more dogs in the program, I might be able to get down to 1. And then some of my job duties changed and I had to back off a little bit. I still participated at definitely every month, but I had to back off a little bit just because I didn't have capacity for a little bit. And that's kind of the good thing because there's certain areas of campus that are super busy at this time of year or this time of year. And so you kind of adjust. When you've got capacity, then you serve more. And when someone else has more, then they serve more. And then in the summers, we kind of thought that would be kind of a dead time, but they decided that it'd be a great idea for the dogs to be part of new student orientation, which was my absolute favorite thing to do and Evie's favorite thing to do. It was so much fun. The new students absolutely loved the animals, and their family loved to see their student interacting with these dogs because they're leaving their family pets behind. And the parents got excited and their siblings got excited, and it was just the most fun. And so when we thought the summer would be a time that we could all recoup, it just didn't turn out that way, at least while new student orientation was going on. So that was a kind of a fun thing that we got to do, and it was a little more low key. And but it was just such a blast, just because everyone had such a blast with it. And it was new people. Oftentimes at our visits, we would see a lot of the same students or staff members that would want to come see the dogs. And with new student orientation, every day is a different day. And so we got to see lots of new students and new families, and that was really fun. So I enjoyed that so much. So, it depended. There were certain times of the year during finals, we all worked a lot. And you just had to plan for during finals time that it's gonna be that way. Or if there happened to be some incredibly sad incident that happened, a death of a student, death of a faculty member, something like that. Sometimes it was a death in a department of an employee. Then we would all, be ready to serve extra if needed. And that's just something that you just know is part of it, that you're going to go where you're needed. And sometimes those needs are greater than they are other times of the year.
And in that respect, as the handler, are you given any extra training on how to navigate that?
Yeah, so the good thing about the P3 program is we have continuing education. And so every month we would have a different topic. And so sometimes it would be from the veterinarians at our college of veterinary medicine that would talk to us about, animal health or animal behavior, things like that. Or it could be as simple as, when it's hot outside, how to help your dog survive the heat because you have to walk from here to there. Sometimes that continuing education was with university counseling, helping us understand, behaviors when people are depressed or anxious or sad, and how to navigate that with a dog. And it's really more just being aware of how your dog is helping, whether anyone's even speaking. They just are letting that out with the dog. The dog gets it. Somehow the dogs understand. And so it's really just more helping us be aware of, what to ask, what not to ask, what would be wise to say, not wise to say. So it's really more guidance. But they continue to do those, and we do those monthly during the school year. Usually we don't have them as much in the summers because people travel and are gone. But it was just something that we always needed. They would always give us materials to help us, if you wanted to follow up later or go watch this webinar or go to this website for more information. But they just always reached out to the experts to help us, learn more so we could be more present with our dogs and not just the person holding the leash.
So you have to hold the leash though.
All the time. You never can let go of the leash.
Some of the rules are.
There's very stringent rules. So OSU is affiliated with the Association for Therapy Dogs. I'm in another program that's also ATD, so I get them confused. The Association for Therapy Dogs, is that right? And they have rules, and if you are going to be certified by them, you have to follow the rules. And so some of them are about you always have to have a leash, and it has to be a leash of a certain length. And they don't have long leads. And so unless you have a very small dog, you have to have, it's obviously according to the size of your dog, because you can't have a little dog on a very short leash. But so there's all kinds of rules, and there's rules about how the dogs can or cannot interact. When they're working, they cannot interact at all in public. So if you're getting ready to do a visit with another dog, you have to figure that out when they're not, where people can see, let them greet each other, say hello, and then they'll leave each other alone usually. And you do that where no one can see that, because it's just not, you have to keep the dogs separated. They're not there to play together or to roughhouse, as dogs might do. They're there to work. And so there's rules around that. There's rules about what the handler needs to do, what the handler can't do. I could never hand my leash to someone else to hold. I have to be the one holding the leash. No one else could take my dog out to go to the bathroom. I had to do that. Now, if they didn't have their therapy dog vest on, which OSU has their own therapy dog vest, And I just had a regular leash. Someone could take my dog out then, but never when they're in uniform can someone else assist them. And so there's a lot of very particular rules, and we are certified every year. So every year you have to pass a test that you remember the rules, and it's pretty serious. You have to answer questions, and you have to make sure that you have reviewed. And sometimes you think, is that right? And and it's pretty stringent. And if you don't pass a certain level on that review test, then you are on probation for a bit. So it's a very serious matter. They want to make sure we're following the rules. We don't want anything to happen that would be negative. We don't want anyone to get injured or anything like that. So if we follow the rules, we tend to avoid any negative occurrences.
I would imagine that the liability, so there's probably insurance or legal
There
part
is.
of all of this.
There is. So OSU does pay for liability insurance through our program. There's also insurance available through our certifying Therapy Dog Association or Alliance, I guess is what it's called. And so they're covered, but my dog cannot wear its OSU vest when it's not on campus. I can't take my OSU dog to a hospital, say, as an OSU therapy dog. Now, she can still be a therapy dog somewhere else in a private way. I have to have a different vest for her, and they can't wear any of their OSU regalia when they're not working for OSU. And that way they're covered by our certifying agency because they're our therapy dog. But when we're on campus, OSU is covering us, and so they don't want anything to happen either. So they want us to follow the rules too. And we have our legal counsel is represented on the P3 board here on campus just to make sure that we're following not only just the rules of our governing agency, but also we're following the rules of OSU, and that we're not doing anything that might be a cause for alarm for anyone on campus. They want to protect themselves too.
Sure. During your time of serving, were there any incidents that required?
No, I can't. I cannot remember. I had one time when I happened to be in a building, a campus building, and I was going there for a meeting, and I came around a corner, and there was another therapy dog in the building, and they were not expecting me to be there with my therapy dog, and they happened to not have their dog on a leash at that moment, and that was not per the rules, and that startled that dog to see another dog in his area. And there was a little moment, a little riff between the dogs. Nothing bad happened, but it sounded bad, but nothing bad happened. But that could have been avoided by making sure your dog is always on a leash. And someone in that department reported it to the program office. And so then we all had to go through training about how you're supposed to work even when you're in your offices, and so nothing bad came of it, but it could have. And so it's just something like that. I don't remember an animal ever biting anyone. I don't remember anything like that ever happening. It may have. Sometimes those things happen and they don't get reported, but I don't remember ever getting the email that said, hey, this happened and be cautious. Now there's been some times I know handlers have sensed maybe whoever they're at, whatever event they're at, maybe there's things happening at that event and their dog is not liking it. Maybe people are acting crazy and wild, and the dogs are getting nervous and scared. And in moments like that, we're just told, take your dog and go. And you get to make that choice. You know your animal better than anyone else. And so we would just take our dogs and go. So I know that's happened a couple of times just because we sensed this was not going to go well, or there could be something dangerous here for the dog. And it could just be people just being crazy and wild and pulling dogs' tails and stuff as people do. And sometimes it's just kids and they just don't know how to act around dogs. Maybe they've never had a dog. And so sometimes you just have to try to help them and educate them. But sometimes if you're not getting the results you want, it's better just to pull back. But I don't recall any incidents. I know there's never been a dog that's been kicked out of the program for misbehaving like that. So that's just not something. They're trained so well. And the handlers are trained as well, that we just learned that you just know when you need to move on, and or what's accepted and what's not. Yeah.
Have any of the handlers ever been kicked out?
I don't. I know. I mean, there's been moments where they've had to have conversations with them. For a long time, we didn't have specific expectations for you need to work this many events. That was in the early days. And so it would be, some people would get their dog through the program just so they could bring their dog to campus, is what it felt like. Mm-hmm. No one ever told me that, but that's pretty much what it looked like, because they wouldn't work any of the events. They just wanted to bring their dog to campus. And so then they had to finally put some guidelines in that you need to work so many, visits a semester. And we did it over a semester initially because, as I said, some people could work certain times of a semester and other times they couldn't. Just so that everyone had to do that so that they could continue being in the program. Because without it, we had some dogs that were working so many shifts just to cover the shifts when we had other dogs that weren't doing their part. And so to be equitable, we had to put some of those rules in place. And you hope that you don't have to do that. So sometimes it was just a conversation like, you haven't worked any shifts, this month or this semester, or we need you to step up. And most people would do it, not all of them. And sometimes they would move on and they would go leave campus and go wherever, and then we didn't have to worry about it anymore. But for the most part, everyone's doing this because they want to help, they want to participate. There's always going to be someone that has their own, desires, but for the most part, everyone's doing it because they see the good it's doing.
So how long would a typical visit last?
They usually last an hour. Because after about an hour, the dogs have had about enough. They have given all of their love and attention out to all the people. And sometimes there's a lot of people. And sometimes there's just a few, but sometimes there is a lot of people. And the dogs are exhausted. And I know my dog would come back to my office and would crash for a couple hours after that. They're just exhausted because they've given their all. And, they've taken on all the emotions of all the people that have been there, even though you don't realize it, that dogs just sense when people are struggling or when they need something. And so they take all that on, and so they're tired. And so they usually rest. And so we try to keep the visits to an hour. Sometimes if it's an event, it might be 2 hours, but even if it's a 2-hour event, we started to make it where they would serve an hour and then another dog would come and serve for the next hour, just to break it up, just because for the dogs and probably the handlers too. After an hour, you've talked about all the people you want to talk to and used all the words you want to use that day, right? And there's some people that are much more extroverted that can do it all day long, but their dogs can't. And so, it's just for a matter of keeping the dogs, safe and happy and, healthy. We don't try to overdo it. And so usually the visits are an hour. Sometimes they'll be 30 minutes, but oftentimes they're for the full hour.
Would you do more than one a day?
I tended to because I couldn't have Evie with me at work every day. And so if I could do 2 in a day, I just made sure there was ample time in between so she could go take a break, get a drink, do what she needed to do and kind of, recoup. And so I would sometimes do 2 a day. I wouldn't do 2 big ones where I knew it was going to be a lot of people at both events. I just couldn't do that to her or myself for that matter. But so if I knew it was going to be a smaller event here or a bigger event here, I could combine those, but I didn't do 2 large events in the same day.
How did you keep track of that? Have logs or something?
We do have logs, yeah. So every month we submit how many visits we've done and how long they were and an estimate of how many people we think was at that visit. And so obviously we're not doing tick marks. So you just kind of have to guesstimate. It seems like there were probably about 20 people that stopped by. Or this was an event with 200 people. We probably saw 100 of those. And so we would just have to do our best guesstimate. It's easy sometimes on a smaller group. I know there were 5 students there. That's all I saw today. But when it's larger group, you're really just guesstimating. And we would keep track of that every month. That would also help us to detail how many hours we had spent serving and how many visits we had done as a whole group, not only individually, but as the whole group. So we could start to see, do we need more dogs? How many visits we're not getting any dog to sign up because it was not a good time. We had other things going on. We didn't have any available or just no one didn't sign up for that particular thing. And so it's just a matter of gauging so they can, just for on a program level, to make sure that everything's covered.
So if you sign up, did you have to go into a certain place to do that or online? Or
Beautiful Sign Up Genius is how we did it originally. They may have a new plan for that now. They probably did an app. I don't know since I've been out of the program, but we had a Sign Up Genius. And at the beginning of the semester, we had a lot of standing visits that we're always in the Reboot Center every Thursday during lunchtime. And so you could go in if you knew that was a good day for you, go in and sign up in advance. And so that was good because that way then they just had to fill the holes. And then sometimes people let you know that tomorrow we have something going on. Could you bring a dog? And we would get an email that to do it, you would also have to go through the Sign Up Genius to just say, I'm taking this one. And then we have student workers that assist the program called Ruff Riders, RUFF, Ruff Riders. And they signed up too. So we would always know if there was going to be a Ruff Rider there. And they would be there to help us hand out all the dogs have their own little playing cards, if you will. And so the Rough Riders would either help pass those out or to get the dogs water or to help with crowd management. And so they would sign up too. So then we would know, are we going to have a Rough Rider there, or are we going to need to do this all of ourselves? So it's a really good plan. And it's also fun to say, oh, I haven't worked with that dog, I'm going to sign up so I can work with that dog too. Or if you have a friend in the program, we're going to do this one together. And so that was fun to be able to kind of see who you're going to be working with, or if you were going to be alone that day, you would know going into it.
Were the Rough Riders part of it from the get-go?
They were not. I would say they probably joined us, gosh, maybe in my recollection, maybe 4 or 5 years into the program, because we were starting to grow and we had many more people coming to see the dogs, and we just couldn't do all the things as handlers. And so it was really good because we had a lot of students that said, I want to volunteer, how can I volunteer? And if they want to help us. So at first we just took a few volunteers, and then Kendria and Mrs. Harkis thought maybe we could make this into like a program for the students that want to do this, and they can get volunteer hours if they're trying to accomplish volunteer hours, or if they just want to help. And so ended up, we had probably 20 student volunteers in the program at any one given time. And that way they could do it, they could manage it with their school schedules, or if they work, they could pick up an hour or two here to help with the posse program. And that was so helpful to us as handlers to have them. And some of them have done it their entire time they've been at OSU. They have to apply just like all the handlers do. And they're interviewed too. And some of them have just done it for a year, whether they're, graduating or they realize they just can't do it with everything else they have going on. But, if they want to stick around for 4 years, and they're usually the best ones because they're used to how we all work. But it's great that they want to participate. We want to participate with them.
Did you get close with any particular one?
There's been a couple that have really, sometimes people just gravitate towards certain dogs and certain animals. And so I've had a few that just loved Evie so much. They would always say, oh, every time I see Evie, I want to sign up if I can. And that was really nice. I don't have any ongoing relationships. I know Kendria has a lot of them because she interacts with them a lot more than most of us do. But yeah, there's been a few that, they're just fun to work with. They do their job well. They interact well. And so sometimes you just kind of, oh, I'm so happy they signed up. They're so good. And others, if I didn't know them, you just don't know them, and you get to know them. They're always very friendly, and they always love your dog. So I don't remember that I've ever worked with one that I thought, well, they're just, goofing off. They've always done their work, the ones that I've been interacting with. So.
Okay, well, early on, was their gear, like the leashes
yes.
the vest or whatever?
Yes. So once you earn your therapy dog status, you start out with a practice vest, and so it says it's your training vest. It even says I'm training on it, and therapy dog in training, something like that. And so you get your training vest. It's still a little bit different than the regular vest, and so you get your full-fledged P3 vest in the OSU tartan. You get that when you graduate the program. They do a baccalaureate every year, and they get their gear, and they are assigned a official leash based on their size, and a collar, and they get a gear bag, which is some kind of backpack. It has other little goodies in it, and a name badge. And so, yeah, you get all that. And then if, something happens and you have to replace it, the handler gets to replace it. They give it to you once, but you got to take good care of it. So there goes my earring. And so it's, so you get that gear, and it's an honor because you're the only, dogs don't have plaid vests. That's just not regular. There was a concern originally that anyone could go and order a dog vest off of the internet, and that was happening. Some of them were getting vests that look a lot like our training vests because they're just solid color, and so just to protect our program, they designed this official P3 vest with the tartan, OSU tartan plaid on it, and there's not any other dogs walking around with that same vest. And then the dogs' names are embroidered on it, and so that makes it official. And people can then know which dog they're talking to, and it's just kind of quite an honor to put on your vest. And then the handlers, we have gear that we can buy. We have shirts and jackets and things that every year you can buy that have the logo and everything on it, very official. And anytime you're on a visit, you have to wear some form of official gear, whether it's a jacket or a shirt. So just so someone knows that you are the official handler, you have your badge you have to wear. But it's just something that we want to, it's an official program. We want to look like it. And so there is official gear, and in it you can't be caught using the wrong leash. You have to use the P3 gear when you are working with your dog. Now, when I was just walking Evie, if she just came to work with me one day, usually I would walk her on a leash that was not my P3 gear because she was not working at that time. I did have her on her P3 vest because she is a representative of this campus. But if she's just out looking at the squirrels down at Data Pond, I gave her a little break if she wasn't working. So, but yeah, they have to wear their gear when they're on campus. It's they're official ambassadors.
Well, since they have their name on them, you don't have to turn it back in when they stop being.
No, except we do turn it back in. They've been really nice in the program. When any of the dogs have left the program, we return everything that we use. So sometimes, like, if it's a collar or a leash that is not, worn, it's still in good shape, it can be passed on, or it can be a backup if someone happens to have a wait till the new one can come in. So we've used them for that. But also some of the dogs, they've gotten a shadow box with all their stuff in it after the fact, just as a memory of time of, their service. And so that's been a nice thing when a dog has passed away, that they get this lovely little shadow box. So you get it back even though you've turned it in. And they just want to kind of keep track of where everything is. They don't want people out with their dog vest on 3 years after they've left the program. And so they pretty much have us turn everything back in. But a lot of it goes to use in other capacities. And all of our clothes, we can keep those. But we usually turn it in. They have a closet where they keep a lot of those. So if someone needs another shirt and it's not time, they only place orders 1 or 2 times a year, then they can go through that closet and see if there's anything. Because we don't wear them that often. They rarely get worn. And so they can go and see if there was something. I had a really nice jacket that I turned in that had barely been worn. And a friend in the program said, "Oh, I think I got your jacket. It is so nice." I'm like, "I know, that is a nice jacket." So sometimes you hate to give those things up, but they always go to good use after the fact. Yeah.
And I noticed the last time I walked by the president's office in Whitehurst, there's a frame with, I guess, the handler and the name of the dog and then Pete's Pet Posse. I don't know if they did that before you.
I know there is a garden. There's a P3 garden outside. It could be Mrs. Hargis, had her dog in the president's office for a long time, and he was in our first inaugural class. So I haven't seen that. I ought to go take a look at that. But yeah, we had several in that first floor of Whitehurst when I was there with mine, and Mrs. Hargis had her dog, and Kendria had an office over there too. So we had Charlie in there too. So we had several dogs out there on the first floor of Whitehurst any given moment. And outside the offices, they would have signs that we would post if your dog was in or out. So people didn't just stop in and, bother people that were working there. "Oh, is the dog in?" Then you could just look at the sign and see if someone was in or out, which was really helpful because you just never know when someone needs to pet a dog, right? So I'll have to go take a look at that. I haven't seen that, but I know that P3 Garden is something right outside of Whitehurst is very special to us. Yeah, for sure.
I'm thinking maybe that's where they have you in and out. Maybe if you have a dog in that office for the day.
Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, Dr. Schramm, our president, when she was at the Health Sciences Center, College of Medicine in Tulsa, she had a dog in the program too. And so she's real familiar with our program. And so her dog also passed away. So her dog is no longer in the program either, but she's very familiar with our program. So, that would have been great too when she came on board. If she had her dog, that would have been fabulous too. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, but she's very familiar with our program.
Yeah, it seems like I've also seen a bumper sticker that says "Shed Happens."
Oh yeah, shed happens, and we handed those out sometimes. And a lot of us put them on our vehicles because a lot of us had dogs that shed, and it was people could see us coming and going because we had dogs with lots and lots of fur. So yeah, I thought that was I don't even know where that came from, but it was pretty funny. So that was one of our stickers that we gave out to people because it's funny.
So early on, you were doing some PR.
I did a lot of PR because there wasn't many of us to do PR. We have a very small class, and some people that was not their thing. And so Kendra would say, "I don't always want to be the face of this program, so put Evie out there." So we did a lot of PR. Evie and I did an article for the Oklahoman. Found out Evie's not real big on cameras, so we had to navigate that. She had a little misbehavior on one of our photo shoots, but it's okay. Nothing that couldn't be repaired. So she doesn't like cameras. We think, Evie survived a tornado, and she didn't act up until the camera started flashing. Mm-hmm. And we don't know if it's because those flashes was a trauma response. That was the only thing we could ever figure out, because it was cameras. She just didn't like cameras. She was fine until the camera started snapping and the flashes started going off. So, but we did a lot of PR. She and I did, I think, for the Oklahoman, a big article about that. We did a lot of interviews, and lots of pictures. And it was just because it was unique at that time. There was not a lot of colleges. Now, some colleges have where, they'll bring in a dog during finals or something, but it's not a program. This is the first of its kind. So we had interviews from all over. And then we did a TEDx OK State here in 2014, something like that, 2013, 2014. Sure. They had one of those here. And so I represented the Pete's Pet Posse program, and that Evie was on stage with me. And then we brought out Charlie near the end of that. And we also had a video clip with Mrs. Hargis and her dog in it, so that everyone could kind of see a little bit about the program, which was good. That's still out in the, on the World Wide Web. You can still find that 10-year-old video. And then our veterinarian who works with our program, Dr. Sipniski from the vet college, she was also on that TEDx event. And so things like that are just how you get the word out, and people start to understand what this program is. And statewide, when you're in the Oklahoman or you're in something for the Tulsa World, that's where people hear about the program. And it helps us help get students to OSU. Believe it or not, it's also a recruitment tool, because what other school has dogs? Well, the other one down the interstate doesn't have that program. And so a lot of these kids are just ecstatic that they can come here and pet dogs all day, right? And so it's it can be a recruitment tool, and it makes their parents feel better knowing that there's going to be a dog there. My daughter needs someone just to comfort them or make them happy after a rough test. Go pet a dog. There's always going to be a dog somewhere on campus. And so, there's lots of reasons we do the PR, and it helps us fundraise. People hear about a program, and then they want to give money, and all the money stays here. This isn't a funded program. This is something that we have to raise money for. And all the handlers pay to, be in the program initially to do the training. And so, it takes money. And so it doesn't come out of the budget of the university. That's all self-raised. And so you got to get the word out about what these dogs are doing and what it takes to keep this program alive.
So what were some of the other fundraising type things you guys would do? Yeah,
we did a movie event, a film festival one year, that we had submitted a video, a whole movie to. It was a traveling film festival. It was only about animals, and ours got accepted. So it traveled here to show not only our movie, but the other 3 or 4 that were part of that festival. And people had to, buy tickets to that. Every little bit, even if you're selling the tickets for $5 or $10, when you can fill up, the little theater with people, you can get a pretty good, return. And then we've done Philanthropete has been, something on campus that you can give to different programs, but we've been included in that. P3 is something that you can select if you want to give money to during that Philanthropete event, usually in the spring. And so a lot of the kids want to give to that. And then there's someone at the foundation that helps us raise money for our program, and they may have someone that's heard about the program and said, hey, I'd like some of my funds to go to that program. I know on United Way you can designate who you want funds to go to, and I always designated P3, so I had a little bit of my funding to go to P3. And so it's just different people that selected. I have a friend that still works on campus, and she every year just gives a donation to the program in honor of Charlie and Evie, because we were the first dogs and she was so special to us, and she always remembers our dogs. And so even though Evie passed away, she is always giving in memory of Evie, and then also in honor of Charlie, who's still in the program. So it's different people that want to give different amounts, and oftentimes they've had some experience or they've heard about this program and they believe in it, and so they're willing to give some money towards it.
Is it still self-funded?
It's still self-funded. Still is. It's just, it takes a lot of money to keep this thing going. And so we have to do fundraisers. But because I think the generosity of the handlers, that they're willing to give their time and they initially pay for the training, I think it's just something that we tend to do because we see the value of it, and it's just something you kind of do selflessly. But yeah, it'd be great if there was a big deposit of money. Think of all the things we could do with that. But we also don't have lots of money just laying around so you just have to do what you have to do for a program like this, and everyone's been so generous to help us. So I don't think they have a lot of money laying around, but we definitely try to be good stewards of the funds that people entrust to us.
And the location of it has changed.
Yes.
Evolved.
It has. So we didn't have an office at first, and then there kind of needed to be a place just to store all the P3 stuff. And so we had a little office in human resources that Kendria used for the program office. And then the union graciously offered a very small space in their union so that people could actually stop by, because in HR it was kind of buried back in the back of the office. It was hard. People couldn't just come by there. So the union had a place that actually people could stop by if a dog was going to be in the office. There's not always a dog in that office, but sometimes there is. So it's just a central location. Or if you need to, turn in something, or you want to talk about how you would, give funds, there you could always go to the office and find Kendria, who is our program manager, or some of our student Ruff Riders they have hours that they work while they're there, and they can help with the program. And so it's just a good central location. So second floor of the union has been that's been a very nice gift. It's a very, very small office. That not many other places could occupy that, but it's worked out really well to have a central location for everyone to kind of know as the P3 office for sure.
I'm imagining the student union may have not been as thrilled at the beginning of it.
Yeah, I don't think.
Of food, I guess.
Yeah, you have to keep the dogs away from the food. None of the dogs are supposed to be around the food court. So if anyone ever sees a dog in the food court, A, it's probably not one of our dogs, and B, something's seriously wrong, because we all know you just don't take the dog to the food court. And so I think there was that initial thing, but because of its location, it's not near the food court. It's on the second floor. It is handy. It's near the elevator, and so it's very handy. Someone could come in, just immediately go upstairs, or up the stairs, or at the top of or at the elevator, get off, and it's right there. I think it was just a matter of how do we make this work, because we have places on campus that we don't take the dogs, and is the union one of those places? But because of its location, I think most people know, okay, I know that if I can't be around the dogs, they're going to be there, and then they can, navigate as needed. And so it's been good for that matter. That way they don't have to worry about, I don't know when I'm going to run into a dog. Usually if they're in the union, there's going to be one or two places they're probably going to be. They're just not all over the place. So yeah, usually the office or the reboot center, sometimes when I was here in the training rooms, not so much now because we don't have a dog in the training department, but pretty much you knew where you might find a dog there.
Did you do any visits in the library?
I did. So we have regular visits here in the library. We have assigned times that we do visits, and the only thing about the library is the marble floors on the first floor and part of the second floor. A lot of the dogs don't like the marble floors. They like carpet. There's some dogs that just don't. They freak out when there's no carpet. We had one dog that just couldn't come to the library because it just needed to be on carpet. And to get to the carpet, you had to go across the marble floors, right? So my dog, although she liked laying on the marble floor, she wasn't real keen on the marble either. And so we didn't do as many visits over here unless there was a need, because there's often people that just want to do the library. There's sometimes you get your favorite. I told you I like new student orientation. There's some people that just love to work the library visits. And so great, then that's, your dogs don't mind that, then so be it. And so, they, sometimes it just has to do with the flooring, but we did have one dog in the program that just had never been on any kind of flooring except carpeting. And so it really freaked out when they had to go on wood floors, tile floors, or in this case, the marble floors downstairs. But y'all have great visits over here, and there's always tons of students here, and the staff members too, but there's always tons of students, and they're so relieved because I can take a break from studying to go pet a dog. What could be better, especially at finals time. We try to really ramp up our visits in the library during finals time.
I think this past Valentine's Day they had Smooch a Pooch.
Oh yes, we used to do Smooch a Pooch over in Whitehurst. Evie and Charlie started that because we wanted them to be able to. Evie and Charlie have a history because they were the first dogs, and they also were pretty keen on each other. They were even in when I'm talking about PR, they did a PR for a love affair for the student union. They did a whole video on them and going together and licking each other, and it was quite hilarious during Valentine's Day one year. So they did this smooch a pooch. They started that, and then when HR moved out of Whitehurst, they didn't really have a central location to do smooch pooch, and Evie was no longer in the program, and Charlie's not here as much because he's getting a little older, and so someone said, we gotta get smooch pooch back, because everyone loved it. Whether you wanted to smooch a pooch or not, it was fun to participate for Valentine's Day. So I'm thrilled that it is continuing on, because we had a staff member on campus actually build a kissing booth for these dogs, because they just love to kiss each other, and it was pretty funny. And that was one time when we were allowed to let the dogs be together and let them do their smooching, but we tried to still keep them separate as much as we could. But that was one event where we just said, you know what, they love each other. And then Charlie decided that he wanted all the girls, he wanted all the dogs, and so Evie kind of just, allowed him to be his wild self for a while. But yeah, they've been fast friends for a long time.
Yeah. I know they have a great white Pyrenees was
yes
part of this one, and it was on the carpet.
Yes, and so I don't know if that's a dog that doesn't like the tile or the marble floors, but some of them don't. So strange.
Shit happened that day.
Oh, really. I bet. Yeah, with the Pyrenees, I can only imagine. That probably was quite a mess, and that's hard to get up off carpet for sure. Yeah.
I think it was the favorite of the day, though.
Oh, but they're beautiful. Oh, they're so beautiful, and that dog is very friendly too, by the way. So, yeah, there's just some incredible dogs in this program. I mean, you just can't help but fall in love with them. They are just the best, and you want to take them all home. They're all well trained. They're all sweet as they can be. I met one of the newer dogs last week on campus, and that was the most calm dog. I mean, Evie was a very calm dog too. That's one reason they wanted her in the program. But this dog was absolutely the most calm dog I have ever been around. And I asked its handler, does she ever, go berserk? And she's like, oh yeah, she has her moments, just like any dog, but she's working, and she was fantastic. So it made me happy. She said, I remember when you had Evie in the program, and this was a wonderful dog. So there's just so many good dogs in this program. So many. It's the best program.
I think if you get too many, how do you pick? If they're all good, how do you
Yeah, you know what? It goes down to, I'll tell you how they've decided, how they make those decisions, is how many do they already have in that college or that department, so that they try to spread it out. So we've got them all the way from athletics to the foundation and everywhere in between. And is it a department or a college that has any concerns about having dogs? So even if we already have a dog there, is there capacity to have another dog, or is there someone there that can't be around dogs? And so they have to weigh all those decisions, right? But they don't want, like when we had a lot in HR, that was a lot for one department, and it just kind of happened that way. And so they didn't want to continue to do that. So they've tried to spread it out across campus, also so that at any given time, if you are near facilities and you want to pet a dog and you're housed over there at maybe one of the north, residence halls, you don't have to go that far to find a dog. And so they try to spread it out. And that's usually what is some of the determining factors. If, all dogs are great, right? But we can't take every single dog. So sometimes it's where would be the best location for a dog to be housed. And or what is the capacity of that person? If it's a faculty member that's also doing a ton of research right now, they may not have the capacity that someone else might have more time. And so maybe that has a determining factor. But for a long time, it was, where are they located on campus, and where can we have more dogs that would make sense in the landscape of the campus?
Yeah. And when you're getting the word out, you mentioned trading cards.
Oh yes,
so
let's go back
to that.
Yeah, the trading cards.
How did that idea come about?
I remember someone coming into my office with a trading card, and they had been on another campus, or their husband had been on a campus. He was at another campus, if I remember the story correctly, and had given it to her. He had gotten a trading card somewhere, and they thought it was so cute. So they brought it to me and said, wouldn't it be great if we could get cards like this for Evie? So I gave it to Kendria, and I said, I don't know, what do you think? And she's like, that would be so fun. And so it just was a matter of investigating how we could make that work, getting pictures of all the dogs. And then on the back, you had to have a little bio, and you had to have a picture with the handler, so you would know if the handler matched the picture on the card. And some of the little details on the back, the bios were kind of still like one of Evie's was about chasing squirrels at Theta Pond, and Charlie's was something about his girlfriend Evie, which went out of date when he didn't love Evie anymore. No, I'm just teasing. But yeah, we started doing those trading cards, and oh my goodness, people absolutely love them, and so we go through a lot of trading cards. That's one thing when you fund the program. If you donate to the program, it goes to helping buy those cards because the students love. A lot of students collect them. And this year, everyone was always like, what are we going to do with them once we get our collection full? And there was nothing like, well, there's not a prize. You just, congratulations, that's great. So this year, for the 10-year anniversary, they actually did a prize that if you got so many cards, and they had done some 10-year anniversary cards that were somewhat silly. The dogs were being silly. And then they did a reprint of the original 8 dogs. Even if they were, not in the program anymore. And so you had to collect those 2, and you had to go to different things to collect. And from my understanding, there was a lot of trading happening on this campus for some of the cards that were no longer in print. Like I was warned, if you have any old cards of Evie, don't bring them on campus because you might be, arrested by someone. They were very popular. They wanted to win, and the prizes were not that big a deal. But just knowing that you're getting something for your efforts, people really were very tenacious. I'll just put it that way to make sure they collected the cards. But it's just fun, and people, there were students and staff members that would have little, holders for all the dogs and all the cards, and they would keep track of them and which ones did they still need, and when is this dog going to be at a visit? I'm still waiting on their card. And I mean, it was a pretty big deal. And so, who knew? It was just someone had seen a similar thing somewhere else and thought it'd be cute. And Kendra took it and ran with it. And it was fun. I just couldn't believe how many cards. There's some handlers that go through so many cards because they do a lot of visits. Mm-hmm. If you don't do as many visits, you don't go through as many cards. But there was, and it was fun. It was a fun thing. So you couldn't leave. Evie always had to have cards in her vest pocket because you never know, even if you're on a visit or not, someone's going to say, "Do you have a card?" So it was just something fun, and the students just love it. So it's just for the fun, yeah.
So who took the pictures? The official OSU photographer?
Yes, we did. We had the OSU photographers, they've been very gracious to our program. They've taken a lot of PR pics for us. They took all the dogs. And at that time, when we first did the pics, there weren't very many dogs. But when you get 50 dogs in a program, you're taking a lot of pictures. And some dogs, like mine, don't enjoy the process. And so that's a little extra work for them, bless their hearts. And then other dogs just eat it up. And so, but yeah, the OSU photographers from communications and marketing, that's who, or brand management now, that's who did the pictures. And they did a phenomenal job. They just, thank goodness they love the dogs too. So that was a very good relationship for sure.
Well, so that one's worked pretty well. Did you try some that just didn't work?
I can't recall anything that we've done that just hasn't worked well. Most people, if there's dogs involved, they want to be a part of it. People just love animals, and so I can't recall things now. So, there may be others, people on the board might say, oh yeah, we're never doing that again. But those conversations never probably made it out of those board meetings. But I don't remember anything that we did that none of the handlers were like, oh gosh, I can't believe I have to do this. Because it was just always usually, fun, and there wasn't anything about it that was just so awful that you just never wanted to do it again. I don't remember anything I ever did that, oh my gosh, I'm glad that's over. Some of it was a little more tiring, the Valentine's Days, the dog, there's a, Day of the Dog or something in August, and it was always bloody hot. And that was one of my least favorite things. We would have all the dogs on campus that day, and it was so hot. And hot dogs, not hot dogs, it was just a lot for everyone. So that was one I was like, oh, why can't they have the Day of the Dog sometime in February? That would be so much nicer. But we don't plan those things, right? So, I don't remember anything we've ever done that we've ever just been like, yeah, never doing that again. Someone's always found joy in it, and that's why we're here, right? We're here to make people happy and to help them to be happier and to be healthier. And it's just, I can't recall anything that I ever did. I thought, never doing that again. So yeah. I do remember one night early in the program, Kendra and I took our dogs and walked to a sorority house off campus over in Sorority Row. And it was one of the furthest ones away. And I felt like we were walking forever. with 2 dogs, and it was warm, but it was 5:30. We were walking over there, and there were so many sorority people there, and then some of the people that other fraternity sororities in the area came. There were so many people, and it was so hot, and 2 big hairy dogs, and then we had to walk back. And I remember thinking, next time we do this, can we do this when it's cooler? But all of us looked like we were just wet. It was a lot. Now that was one I said, Kendra, we need to rethink how we do this. And she said, yes, we do. That was a lot. And so sometimes she's one to say, how can we do it this way? Or how about this? So she's good because she's been a handler too. And she has those conversations when people ask. So I just can't remember anything I ever did that I thought I will never sign up for that again. It was just, no, I don't remember anything like that. But I'm sure there's been some things that maybe they've tossed in and then back out. I don't know. Yeah, not privy to that.
So you want to attend the board meeting, the advisory board meetings?
No, they have they
can vet it there.
Yeah. They usually have, I think there's about 6 of them on the board, and from different walks of campus, legal counsel's there, and Kendra's there as a program manager. Mrs. Harkis would attend. I don't know if she still attends or not. Someone from HR was there. And then a couple other people that served on the board just in different capacities on campus. And so, they would attend those. And a lot of stuff, they would vet before it ever got out to the rest of us. So occasionally they would ask us, we're just kind of tossing this around, what are your thoughts? But usually they pretty much managed it. And, I never had a problem with anything they did. I did wish they would get longer leashes, but that wasn't their rule. That was the managing group that manages our dogs, so we just have to kind of go with whatever is assigned to us.
Well, as seniors,
yes.
With the next class coming in, did you do anything special with the newbies?
Well, we would, when they were in training and they were trying to get their certifications, we would help. They would always give a call for any of the current handlers to come help. Sometimes they have to learn how to be around crowds of people, so they just needed people to come stand. Or, try to interact with this dog when you shouldn't interact with it. You would know what happens on a visit. And so you try to, rile the dog up. And just so that it would kind of get some reality to, it's not just to sit down with people and it's all happy, because it usually is, but you never know what's going to, come about. And so we would come and play just to help make it real for those dogs, see how they would navigate. It helped them succeed with their certifications, because that was usually during practice. And then they would have us come back during the certification so that they could have a real life experience and not pretend there's 2 people standing here. They would actually they would actually have 2 of us stand there, and we would know how to behave because we've been there, done that, right? And so we try to help them succeed. We're always invited back for the future classes, their graduation ceremonies. We're always invited back for things like that. And so, we try to participate, and then we get to know them. They do a shadow, and so the handler will shadow an existing team, a dog and its handler. They don't have their dog with them at that point because they're not supposed to interact that way, but the handler would come and just observe. So they would do observations. It used to be 3 of them before their dog was certified, just to see what happens on a visit, so you kind of can recognize and know what to expect. And those were always good. There was always good questions asked during those times. So I think that's a really integral part of letting them shadow and observe a few times, because you think you know what happens, but until you actually have been there, you may not really fully understand your role. And so that's a really good integral part of the program, is those shadow sessions. Yeah,
there's a lot more to it than people think.
It's not just bringing your dog to campus and here, pet my dog. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes, for sure.
Yeah, and that's someone will say, well, where's the magic? Define the magic. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know what it is. The dogs bring a lot of the magic because they sense when people need them. I may not know, walking up to you, what you have going on in your world, and you may not want me to know. And that's how most people are. But dogs somehow have a sense that you're carrying something extra. You're happy, you're sad. They have this sixth sense about them. And they just get it. And we don't use, most of us, unless you're someone with really high empathy that really can sense that about other people, most humans don't have that same sense, I don't think. And a lot of people don't share. Sometimes people share. Sometimes you're like, that's a lot to take in, as a stranger. But dogs just get it, and they don't judge. And it feels good. And there's lots of health benefits. This has all been researched. Petting a dog, spending time with any kind of animal lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure. de-stresses you because all of those things are lowered. It balances out some of your some of your systems in your body, and that's just from being around an animal. We have dogs here, but it could be any animal for that matter. And so there's some truth, and that's why this is part of a health initiative on this campus, is because it's good for us to, pet animals and to be around animals. And so I think that's part of their magic too. They just make us feel better. And even if you may not make you happy, it may lighten your mood. Because, people are going through lots of things, and, sometimes they just need to pet an animal. And so that's just something that sometimes they share. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes, I've been with students and they've been in tears because they just failed a final, or, a boyfriend just left or whatever. In those moments, that they're, having a hard time. But then there's other times they keep it within themselves, and the dog just knows, and the dog just senses it, and you can sense that when the dog is done, because they're carrying quite a load that they have just absorbed from whomever has been around them in the moment. So that's where I think their magic is, something we will never understand as humans. They just have their own special sixth sense about what people need. So that's where I think the magic is.
After a day like that, they get extra treats.
I would say yes. I was never one to give my dog a lot of treats, because she got so many treats when she was on campus. Everyone always wanted to give the dogs treats, and you had to they couldn't just bring treats to them. You had your own dog treats that you would allow your dog to eat. And I struggled with that. People would give Evie treats all day long, and I would be like, oh my gosh, she's gonna be, so wired. But she didn't. She loved it, but she wasn't always one to expect treats. Now there's some dogs in the program that eat a lot of treats all the time. So it's just a matter of how they're, handled. But I've never been someone in it. I've had dogs my whole life, and I just haven't ever given them a ton of treats. But there's some people that give their dogs treats all the time, and that's their business. But everyone here wants to give dogs treats every time. You had to have treats in your bag because that's what they wanted to do. They thought they loved that. So
if they put on a few pounds, does the vet have something to say
sometimes
about that?
We've had some dogs that we've had to change some of their diets and some of what kind of treats are you feeding them, and we have to switch that up a little bit because you don't want them to their health status to decline just because they're getting lots of love and treats. So we gotta keep them in tip-top shape for this job. Yes, for sure.
So do you have to go for a yearly exam?
Yes, you have set it up. There are certain times a year that your dog would go back for its annual exam, and that we pay for that through the vet school. You can do it through your own vet too, but you always have to have paperwork to indicate that they have had their vaccinations. Everything that's required, certain things are required every year by a vet. So you have to do that. You have to turn that in not only to the program here, but also to our governing, Alliance for Therapy Dogs. They want to see that every year when we renew. And then, and they give them a thorough exam just to make sure that they're safe, to be around people. And, it's just something that you do when you have a dog not even in this program. You always make sure you get them the shots that they need to stay safe. And you want to be extra cautious when your dog's around a lot of people that are strangers to them. So, every year. And so most of us took advantage of going to the vet school for that. But sometimes you have a vet that you love and you trust. And so you can also use your own private vet for that as well.
When you said we pay for it, is that
the handlers pay for that? Just like you would pay to go to your own vet, you pay for that. And so that's just something that we do. But you got to make sure your dog's healthy. It's so important, to know that your dog is healthy, and so that's just something we do.
Well, at the beginning, did you pay for it, or is that just
we didn't? We had, because there were only 8 dogs. Mm-hmm. So the dean of the vet school was one of our classmates. And so, she was involved in the program creation. And so initially when we had just a few dogs, some of the costs were covered. The veterinary costs were covered. We split them, if I can recall, some things. And then when we started getting so many dogs, that was just not something they could manage. And I don't blame them. I don't know, because no one knew how this would grow. No one, I don't think, had in their mind, I bet we'll have 50 dogs one day, and it'll be at various campuses. I don't think anyone ever envisioned that in that large. And so they had to kind of change how that system worked for the vet school. And I don't blame them. I mean, we all understand it was just something, as things grow, things change. So you just have to adjust. That's fine. I mean, I would pay if I took my dog. It wasn't in the program. I would pay to go to the vet. So same thing. So yeah, and they do so many nice things for us, and they're they do our continuing ed, and they're just good people, and they serve on our board. I'll pay for my vet visit. It's not a big deal.
Well, were there any other perks for the handlers?
Well, I mean, everyone knowing that you're Evie's mom, I think people I got extra kudos just because I had a dog in the program. I mean, that's how people start to know you. You're now Evie's mom. When you have kids, you're their mom. And when you have a dog in this program, you're now their mom. And so people may not know your name, even if you have a badge on. They know you're Evie's mom. And so, even some of our later badges would say Evie's mom on it underneath our name because that's how we were known. I'm trying to think, were there other things? We would get a discount on some different types of dog food if we bought them through the vet school. There was a pet food distributor that gave us a little bit of a discount on food from them if you wanted to do that. It was never mandated, but you could if you wanted to. That was a nice perk. I want to say, now this is kind of hazy, something about pet insurance. At one time, I think that we were able to buy some pet insurance at a different rate, perhaps. I don't know how many people took advantage of that. So there's just been some different things at different times. And sometimes it's because Mrs. Hargis was involved, sometimes we would get advance notice about things that we could bring the dogs to on campus that other people might not get to go to. But if we would bring our dogs, we could go. And things like that was kind of fun. And just getting to work with her, I thought was a big perk. She is a fantastic person. And I tell you, she and her husband knew all the dogs, knew all the handlers. It was important to them. And that's how they treated it. And that's how they treated all of us. And I think that was something special for all of us. We did do an event at their house, I believe, one time. We didn't bring the dogs. We just got to come for a dinner, which was kind of nice. We all got to be there without our dogs. And that was fun. So that kind of, you feel... It's pretty nice to be on first name basis with, the president and first lady. We didn't call them by their first name. They wouldn't have cared. And that was just really nice. So, that was a wonderful part of the program. It's just getting to know them on that kind of relationship. Yeah, love that.
And Scruff.
Scruff's a great dog. He is the best. I don't even know if he's slowed down. And he's been in the program for 10 years now. And he was young. He was a year old, I think, when he first started the program. And I feel like he's still going at the same rate he was going at when he was 1. He is such a cool dog. Yeah. He's great. Love them.
Yeah, I think he's just got an award or something, didn't he? Into the Animal Hall of Fame.
Oh, could be. I wouldn't be surprised.
For Oklahoma?
Could be. He had such an interesting, so many of our dogs have been rescue dogs, and they've had such interesting stories, and his story was pretty phenomenal. And where he landed at the president's house, that's a pretty sweet gig for him. So, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's a reason.
I think that's fantastic. I would
got one.
I hope so.
In 2022, named to the Oklahoma Animal Hall of Fame.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. He deserves every bit of that. Yes, he's fantastic. And his parents too.
Well, and then I had read that the posse itself, the P3, got the Loyal and True Award. Were you part of it?
I wasn't. I was part of the P3 program, but during that, but not. I wasn't there for that event. But yeah, every year someone on campus gets the Loyal and True Award, and one year they chose Mrs. Hargis and the P3 program because of how it was so committed to OSU. And how she did it for, to help OSU be healthy and happy, and just because of what her vision of it was. And so, yeah, she never wanted to take any of the responsibility or any of the praise just herself. She always wanted to redirect that to the entire program. She was so humble about things like that, still is. And so it went to the entire program because everyone knew if you pull her out and just recognize her, she'll turn it to the program anyways. But yeah, I thought that was a really nice thing to do, to recognize the program. Because it takes a lot of work, and a lot of people have invested a lot of hours, and I think it was really kind and thoughtful that they remembered all the work that's gone into that. Yeah.
Then I guess that they're about the same time as when they did the garden. The Pet Posse garden. That
garden, that was kind of a surprise. I was really thrilled. I love that garden. It's usually there's usually people always sitting in the remembrance garden. And it's got a picture, someone that doesn't know this, I don't know that it's on the plaque there, but it's Kendria, our program manager, is one of the people in the statue in the garden. It's after a picture of her. And then there is a dog that is a student is playing with. It's not Kendria's dog, Charlie. It is Bella, who was one of our dogs in our first class that passed away. She was our first dog that passed away. And so it's actually Bella that's being remembered. She's the little schnauzer that's in the garden, in the statue. And then there's a student that's just an anonymous student that is there, interacting with the dog. Kendria's got her leash on Bella. And so it's special to us because it's remembering Kendria. Kendria didn't know all about how this was going to come to be. She had no idea it was going to be what it is now. And then that we remembered Bella, who was her mother was the wife of the OSU Foundation president. And so, it's integrating all the different people that have participated in our program. And so remembering both of them was really special to a lot of, especially if you know everything behind that. It's just such a special place. So I stopped by there as I was coming here, and it's just special to all of us. And I think people that can sit there can see how important this program is to people on campus for sure. Yeah.
Who all was involved in designing that?
It was the board for sure, and it was
That makes sense.
It was something that Mrs. Hargis wanted to do. So I know she, trying to keep secrets from Kendria is tough. Kendria was her, right-hand person when they were on campus. And so, and Kendria is very good at organizing details. And so when you try to navigate stuff without your detail person there, sometimes, you wonder what's it going to end up being, but it turned out okay. So I think Mrs. Hargis was behind a lot of it, but I just love the placement. It's so central, and it's cool there. There's lots of trees. It's just a relaxing place. And it's a very good representation of our program. It brings you peace to be there, and it just is. That's what this program is about, right? So it's such a good picture of the program in that little garden. Love it.
Well, when you first signed up for it, did you think it would still be going 10 years later?
No, no, and I had no idea it would be as large, and that all the OSU campuses would either have a program or gearing up to have a program. I was at OSU Oklahoma City back in the spring, and they said they were getting ready to start their own program there. And that's been a long time coming. I know Kendra's been working on that for a long time with Mrs. Hargis and others, but no, you just think you're just taking your dog and people are petting it and it makes them happy, and that you don't really see the vision. I don't know that Mrs. Hargis thought it was going to be as large. I know she knew it could be really great, but I don't know that she thought it was going to become this. That might be a great question for her. But it was just, we all just were having a ball, taking our dogs, and other people enjoying it and getting so excited there was a dog on campus, and it makes you happy that you're bringing joy to people. And so no, I had no idea at all. And I was happy when the other dogs, they started adding more dogs, because that meant a little bit less work for me. But it was fun. We just had a ball with it. It was just, but no, I would never have dreamed. When they told me that Evie, we kind of think Evie'd be great in this program, I was like, yeah, okay. And I didn't even know what in the world I was just agreeing to. I just, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. And I went about with my new dog, right? And what if I had only known, you go to adopt a dog, you think you're just getting a dog. You don't think you're going to enter into this whole different life change, and you're going to get to do it with your dog. And it was just a blessing to me and to her. And she loved serving in this program. It was just, there were days I'd be like, oh, I have to take my dog today, because it's extra. You have to take your dog out. You got to feed your dog. People come by and pet your dog, and you have visits, and it's a lot to do in addition to your regular 40-hour week job. But all the things you get in return, it was worth every single minute. So I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Well, shortly there, a couple of years later, once it was up and running, the 2015 homecoming parade accident occurred. What do you recall from?
Yeah, that was a very, very, very tough time. So several things come to mind. We got a call, I would say the late afternoon after all that happened. Kendria calling those of us in the program, and there weren't that many dogs in the program at that time. There had only been 3 classes, maybe, so it might have been about 20 dogs-ish, something like that in the program, maybe a few more. And just telling us, you need to be prepared. We're going to be needed. And so whatever time you can spare, we're going to be needed. And then she reached out to a handful of us and said, it was me and her, our trainer, who also had a dog in the program, who was a vet student. Her dog. We were called to go to the police station, OSU police, that next day, and that was the hardest. That was the hardest visit I ever had. A lot of the police officers were in shock for everything they had seen, everything they'd had to deal with in the previous 24 hours. And these are people that, we go and visit them. We would go and visit the police station before a ball game, just to kind of get them excited, have a great start to their day. And so we would interact with them a lot. And it was just so sad. It was somber. And it was so hard to bring the dogs in there. And they didn't want to talk. They just needed to pet the dog. And that's fine. And it was heavy there. Now I remember that distinctly, going there. I remember going to the office of Mrs. Stone, who was one of the employees that were killed. I was very familiar with her office. Evie had been a regular visitor in her office. It was very close to my office on campus, and so Evie had been over there lots of times. I knew Bonnie from other things, and so that was a hard visit. She had been a long-time employee there. Mm-hmm. She was integral to their success as a team. She was just so valuable a team member, and that next to the police station was the hardest visit, and we would go regularly to see them. And they put up a bulletin board, and they would take pictures, and they would put up the trading cards of the dogs that had come to visit them, and that was just a way that they remembered Bonnie and how everyone was loving on them. And I thought that was really remarkable. That one was hard. When we had the memorial service on campus, a lot of the dogs were there for that, or the candlelight vigil. We had dogs there for that, and it was just somber, and everyone was sad, and that's a lot for us to take in. It was a lot for the dogs to take in. We couldn't do it long visits because it was just heavy for a lot of us and the dogs. There was such a somber mood for that week. After, even, several weeks after, it just, you just don't go back to normal after that. And the dogs felt it, and so they worked a lot of hours. There was a lot of commitment during that time, and and even whenever they did remembrance times after that, every year they would try to remember that, and we would try to have the dogs present because it was very hard for a lot of people. We had some injuries on campus for employees and staff member. A staff member lost her son, and so I remember Mrs. Hargis and Scruff going to that office, and how she said it was so hard to go in that office because that employee was young and had lost a 2-year-old son, and she said it was just one of the hardest things she's ever done. And we had a lot of that. So that was the hardest probably time all of us had that were participating in that. It was just heavy, and it wasn't a time to be happy and joyful, and sometimes you just had to sit in peace and quiet and let your dog work their magic, right? And that was all we could do, is just be there to support. So that was a very heavy time. We've had several of that when we've had some student deaths on campus. It's been hard, and sometimes we do it on campus. Sometimes we've gone to a fraternity if they've had someone in their membership that has died for whatever reason. We've gone to their house to support them. It could be in a department if you've had an employee that has passed. You just want to go and support, and there's not much you can say, but just being there with your dog means a lot. And we never just show up. We always wait to be asked. Okay. Because sometimes people don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to have that public moment. And so we don't ever just show up. We wait to be asked. And so when we're asked, we are there. And oftentimes one of the first things people think of is we need the dogs. And I'm so thankful that that's one of the first things that people can think of now here on this campus. And so we don't just show up, we wait to be asked, but we're usually one of the first ones that gets asked. So that was a heavy moment.
Well, after a day or a week or two of that, how do you do self-care? What do you do for self-care?
Yeah, that was always very important for everyone. Well, I petted my own dog for one thing. That's good that I have them. I have them 24/7, right? But I think I couldn't do it every day in a row. After we'd been at the police station that first day, I had to take a break the next day. I couldn't do a visit in the union the next day. It was just a lot. Someone else did some of the visits in the union, and then the next day I was okay. But it's just a matter of, I want to care, I want to empathize. It's a lot for everyone, and we're all in this together. We could talk. Those of us that went to the police station, Kendra and I, and Alyssa, our trainer that went over there, we talked, a lot about how that was, how that went, and what would we do differently? How could we do that differently? We didn't really have a way to do it differently. We just decided it's the dogs. Let's let them do their business and let's just sit back and hold the leash. And so, you just talk a lot to people that understand. Spouses and friends are great, but if they haven't been there, they don't quite get how that works. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's just talking to someone else who's a handler who's had to deal with that, or some of the counselors, they had to deal with a lot of that grief that was happening around campus. And so sometimes we could all just visit together and just kind of let it out, right? And so, but I had to take some breaks. I couldn't do it every single day. I did not do the candlelight vigil because I knew I was doing the memorial service the next day. And so I just thought I can't do both. And that's what we kind of just divided and conquered. And I think that kind of helped save all of us, because you couldn't bear that weight. All of it, you had to split that up a little bit. So.
And it was personal choice.
Yes, it was personal
know
choice.
Yourself and
yep, absolutely. Yeah, and if you had been on a visit and you were signed up to do another one, and all we have to do is say, I can't, and that's great. We'll find someone else, or it's okay. We've got enough, and everyone understood, because it was really, really heavy for a lot of us. Yeah, absolutely. Whether you knew someone or not, I just happened to know someone. But even if you didn't know, the whole situation was just so sad. And you can't not be affected by that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm so thankful we had the dogs then. I just don't even know what the response could have been if we hadn't had that many dogs that were available. Because you can even see there was a lot of video footage that was taken of people with the dogs, and from children all the way up to, staff members, to students, to leadership, see them, pet the dog. Everyone was dealing with it in whatever way they needed to deal with it, and the dogs got to be a part of that. So I don't know that counseling could have handled all of that. So it's good that we had some, pseudo counselors just to listen. Those dogs listen, and they don't judge, right? And they definitely take on the weight. Yep.
Gotta love them.
I'm telling you, I don't know how they do it. That's part of their magic. I don't know how animals do it. And I don't think every animal can do it. I mean, I know I have a cat that could never do that, right? And I know there's, certain dogs that would not be ideal for these roles. But the ones that are chosen and that are trained, they're outstanding. And I just think I'm so thankful that they have figured out how to train them appropriately to handle and manage the situations, and how they prepare the handlers to be ready for similar situations. Who would ever have guessed that we would have to deal with that as a university, as a program? We could never have guessed that was going to happen, but we were semi-prepared that hard things happen and we respond. And so we just figured it out. And it was literally moment by moment. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Long days.
It was some very long days. And I think, it was hard on us, and I only had to do little 2-hour stints. But I think about people like the police officers or people in the departments, and how it was in their face every single day for a long time. And I'm so thankful that my experience was less than theirs. So I wanted to support them, because they needed way more support than I did. It was in their face every day, and probably still is to some, for those that were affected most. I bet that's something they think about very, very often. Yeah.
It was something for you to do, a way to give back.
Oh, yeah.
If that helps.
Yeah, and I don't know how I could have given back in my current role. I mean, that would not have been something that I would have interfaced with. But because of my, participation in the P3 program, I was called upon to help, and that's how I could help. You do what you can with what you have, and that's what I could do with what I had. So Evie and I did the best we could because that's what we needed to do to honor the entire situation. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, we'll switch to a happier.
That would be great. Yes.
So you said what you liked the best with the new student orientation. We
Yes.
covered the sad part too.
Yes.
And then in between, do you do like things for graduation or
Not so much graduation.
commencement?
Not so much. No, now that you say that, we don't really. And again, it's probably because that's just not something that's been asked, right? We don't just show up.
Too much going on.
There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of people. And then sometimes, if people don't know there's going to be dogs there, sometimes there's a little bit of a, why is there a dog here? So I think it's just a matter that's never been someone has asked, because I do think it's because there's just so much going on. They're trying to check all the boxes to make sure these students graduate. So I don't know that we've ever done that. I know we do a lot during, the first week, a lot of the move-ins, we try to, even though it is so hot, we have to really be cautious because it's so hot for the dogs. It's August, but we try to do some of the move-in events. The lights on Stillwater, we always have a booth there. We don't always have dogs there because, again, it's usually on a hot sidewalk, and you can't have dogs on a hot sidewalk very much. And so sometimes we just have some of the handlers without the dogs, but then everyone's like, where's the dogs? So we always try to make sure people know about the program. But, I for the most part, if we're not there, it's probably because we haven't been asked.
Okay.
And we can only be so many places too. I know that a lot of times Kendra has to say, we can't, we have so much going on that same day or time, whatever. So she has to sometimes has to probably break some hearts, but it can't be all things to all people all the time.
Right, and I noticed part of the 10th year anniversary, they've done shirts.
Yes, I bought me a shirt.
Yes.
I bought a shirt, and I love wearing it because people say, "Oh, don't you love that program?" And so it's such an honor for me to go, "Oh, I used to have a dog in this program," and then I tell them who it. Oh, I know Evie. Now there's another Evie in the program now, and so I'm like, I have the original Evie. There's another Evie now. Evie 2.0, I guess. But I love talking about that with people because, and I love seeing the dogs now. It's just, I'm really glad that they honored the P3 program with a t-shirt, commemorative t-shirt from Eskimo Joe's. I mean, you really made it when you get a commemorative t-shirt from Joe's, right?
Yes, really.
I got one too. I paid for one and I wear it with great pride. Yes, for sure. Yes, love it. And I mean, people around know that. Even if they've not even worked on campus, but they know the program. I mean, everyone that's been somewhere in some affiliation with OSU has at least heard of the program. So I've had people just stop me and go, "Oh, I love that program," and so it's fun. I absolutely love it. And then when I see the dogs, I have to always talk to their handlers too. So I feel like we're kind of our own little fraternity, right? So we're all. I think because we all know that we do it for something besides ourselves. We do it for a greater good.
Have you, or do you know if any of the others handlers have been asked by other universities to come talk, or at least called and asked lots of questions? Or
I know that the program office has received lots of questions, especially in the early days when there was so much publicity about it, I know that Mrs. Hargis and Kendria and one of the students went to speak in Austin at a conference about it. And I thought that was a really neat thing that the student got to go and talk. And she was a fantastic student because she was in her shell and she just didn't think college was for her. She was really having a rough time. And she met Charlie, changed her life, changed the whole direction of her life. And she was the perfect student to talk about the program. I'm so glad that they picked her to do that. And so I know that there's been a lot of inquiries about how did you make this work? And, I think a lot of it was, can we duplicate this for our campus? And it's all, I think Kendria's been really honest. If you've got to have a champion, like we had Mrs. Hargis as our champion. And I think it's just a matter of getting your ducks in a row, and it's not funded. You've got to find ways to raise the money, and you've got to have committed people with dogs, and there's just a lot to it. It's not just bring your dogs to campus, right? And so I think she's she may have talked as many into the, idea as out, because it's just a lot more than it looks on the surface. So I know she has fielded those calls. I know Mrs. Hargis has talked about it a lot. I've seen Mrs. Hargis on a lot of interviews on television talking about the program. And, there's been a lot of interest. I just don't know that it's been duplicated anywhere else, except for I hear about, dogs at finals times at different campuses, whether they do rent a dog or that. I just don't think it's a program that they have on any campus. Definitely not in the robust nature we have here at OSU.
Maybe after this 10th year,
I know we may get a lot more PR about it, and people may get excited again and go, "We really need to do that." Yeah. So it's doable. It's just you got to be committed and have a champion to see it through. And she's still involved. They're retired, and she still participates, and she's still involved. And that's a champion right there. Yeah.
It's going to be hard with Scruff.
Oh my goodness, I can't even think about it. I just remember the days when she would be driving around her little orange go-kart, and he would be sitting up there in that front seat, and just like he owned the place and she was his driver. I just loved that. And that's what she said. I'm just driving Scruff. That's what she would tell everyone. And so, I just can't even imagine. He's the best. That's going to be a hard one when he passes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But he's so scruffy. He's probably going to live a long time. He's just a little scruffy guy. He's got the right name.
Yeah. And I think now the Pet Center is named after her, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. Ann Hargis Center for Pet Therapy. Yes.
Okay.
Yep, it is. And it will always be, because she's our champion. She's the reason we have that program in the first place.
So in 20 more years.
Oh my, I can't even imagine. Since Evie passed in December of 21, even though I'm retired from OSU, Kendra is like, "You need to get another dog, and you could come back in the program." And I'm like, I think it's time for someone else to have that opportunity. And you just keep passing the torch. Nothing against being in the program. I loved every minute of it, but it's time for someone else to take up this. Pass the torch, let them take it on, and see what great things they can do with it. So, I'm perfectly fine standing on the sidelines and cheering them on. I'll always be a great supporter. I just won't be an active participant in that way, but I sure sneak a peek every time I get a chance.
So a retiree can have a dog?
Yeah, as long as you have an affiliation with the university. So we have a couple of retirees that were involved in if they want to continue. We have one that was retired. Her dog passed. She had another dog. She went back. She had to take the program all again. They had to do the certification all again for the new dog. And she's still involved because she's still affiliated as a retiree. If you leave, obviously you can't. But if you have some affiliation, now I'm a vendor for the university. So that's one reason I could still participate if I wanted to. And also because I'm a retiree. But as long as you have an affiliation with the university, so just, Joe Blow from 123 Main Street, just because he thinks it's a great program, can't be involved unless there's some affiliation with the program or with the university, and that makes sense to me. You don't want anyone to do it. If they want to be a therapy dog team outside of the university, there's more power to them. People can do that anywhere they want. But if you want to be affiliated with this program, you have to have an affiliation with the university. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then during your time here, COVID occurred.
Oh yes.
How was that with your Office Plus?
Well,
P3?
So most, not everyone worked remotely, and we actually did remote dog visits, if you can believe that, which seemed crazy. And I was the first one to say, "How do you have a pet visit when you're not petting a pet?" And they would just open it up. I would have my dog there laying or sitting next to me, and people could come on and talk to it. We would just talk things through, and Evie would be there. And it was very strange. And it was one of the strangest things I did. And I didn't do very many of them. And we didn't have a lot of them. We did a few, but we had people that would actually tune into the Zoom and want to see the dogs, and it just made them happy to see the dogs and just kind of talk for a few minutes. It was never long. They would come in for a few minutes and they would go out, and that's what I think it was more about, just having it available.
And a connection.
A connection, yeah. And the dogs there. And so we did several of those. So, and different dogs did different days. You just signed up like a normal visit, just happened to be online. It was probably the strangest thing we did. But it kept the program going. We didn't have any classes, didn't do any training during that because you can, be around people. But in that class that was in the middle of training, they had to put their training on hold. And so that it took us back, several months because they couldn't come back together to finish their training, and then they had to kind of get back in gear. So they were a little behind. So that's why we missed a year of getting dogs in the program. So the next one, they had an extra large class because we try to add dogs every year. And then we had that hiccup with the COVID year. But that was a very strange situation with COVID. And dogs don't understand. They just want to get in the car and go somewhere. And if you're not going anywhere, the dog misses out too. So that was a very, very strange time. But that was how they solved it. We did virtual visits, and however that worked, it worked. I don't know.
Well, and when campus opened back up, did you have to do?
We had to do all the things. We had to wear masks. We had to keep distances. And we have short leashes on some of our dogs, and so you're trying to maintain 10-foot distancing, and your dog is on a 2-foot leash. It was interesting.
Could they pet it?
They could pet the dog, but you had to keep your distance. Yes. And there was just a lot of rules around that, and that was very, very difficult to navigate. And I will say sometimes some of the dogs were affected by people wearing masks because they read people's faces too. And I think there was a few dogs that weren't quite sure about the mask situation, and so they didn't do as many visits. And I mean, that's interesting. My dog didn't have any problem with it, but some dogs did because they read people's faces, and just like normal people do. And so there were some dogs that I think struggled more than others with that concept, but luckily we got past that in time, and everything kind of started to return a little bit to normal. But there was a lot of people that didn't even want to do a visit because of whatever fear they may have had. And so, we probably had diminished numbers of visits and contacts during that time, but, it's a program we're going to continue. So you just have to, just like everything else, we just all stuck it out, didn't we?
We sure did. Yeah.
You just stick it out and you get on the other side of it. It's so much better. Yeah. Yep, for sure. That was an interesting time.
Yeah. It's resilient.
Yes.
In various ways.
Yes. Yeah. That was an interesting time. So I'm glad that we're past that. I hope we're always past it.
Did that contribute to your decided to retire?
Yes, because I was used to being at home, and my dog was used to me being at home a lot. And so, there were several factors, but it was hard for me to come back. I had to come back. My job demanded me to come back. I couldn't continue to do all virtual classes for all of our employees all the time. And I just needed to be back for the role that I had. And, so that probably played into a little bit. I did like being at home, and my role was not such that I could do that regularly. So it probably did contribute a little bit. There are, other extenuating factors too, but, it was hard to come back once, and then to leave your dog that you've been with for, 6 months or more, day in and day out. And, we all love our pets. So, and I just wasn't one to bring my dog every day. There are some handlers that bring their animals every single day, and I don't know how they do that. But I could never bring Evie every single day, and so I couldn't do that. And if I didn't bring her, she thought I was neglecting her. So, you can't win for losing. So, yeah. And I'm sure it did contribute in some way.
So what do you miss most about being on campus every day?
I still have so many friends here, and I'm luckily, as a vendor, I still get to come on and do training classes. They hire me to come and do some specific training classes. So I still get to see a lot of people. I miss a lot of the people that I just knew so well on campus, even though, I see about them or we're connected on social media. It's not the same as being in a class with them. I miss a lot of my coworkers. We had a wonderful team in HR. Sometimes I'm on campus and I just think about, I wonder how many times I've walked on this sidewalk in my life, So you just remember things. So it's just probably the people I miss. I always, when I'm on campus, I go to the P3 office and see who's there, just for the sake of it. I miss knowing all the dogs. For so many years, I knew all the dogs. And now, like I said, I saw the one the other day I hadn't met. And it's so strange to me that I don't know the dogs. I miss that. I miss seeing a dog and going, oh, that's so and so, and taking a moment to go say hello. I can still do that, but it's just not the same as when you know the handler and the dog, and so I miss things like that. But I had a wonderful experience working for OSU, and if anyone said should I work there, I would tell them mostly yes. Depends on what department, but for the most part, I would give you a full yes. I had a wonderful experience here, but having been a part of the P3 program probably was the icing and the cherry on top. It just made my experience that much better. Absolutely.
And that started about the time, shortly after you came.
Yeah, I had been here about 9 months when I got Evie, and I had barely figured out how to do my job till I suddenly had a dog with me. So I knew she was with me the entire time that I worked on this campus. And, you move offices or, cubicles or wherever, you tend to move about here or there. And she just went with me everywhere. So she left her little piles of fur in all the little offices everywhere. But yeah, she was with me pretty much all but those first 9 months for sure.
Well, and you were lucky that your department head,
Yes.
whatever, was all gung ho.
Oh yeah, she was all behind it, and then she left in 2018. Or it could have been 19. I think it's 2018. She left, and luckily the person that took her place was promoted up, and so she was familiar with the program, and she we just kept on as we've been doing all along. I didn't have to navigate a new supervisor that'd be like, why is there a dog here? I was lucky in that capacity, because there's a lot of people that have personnel changes, and then everyone freaks out about there being a dog here or a dog there, and so luckily I didn't have to navigate that. But I was very fortunate that I had a lot of support, and when my boss comes in my office just to pet the dog, that's a pretty good day. Yeah.
They need to have a pet party for all.
Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be fun?
And former.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, we'd have to do it in secret because they're not supposed to be seen together. But yeah, we've it was funny. We would the handlers would get together before and go, okay, meet me in the stairwell behind here so we can have the dogs touch noses before we go. Otherwise, they're pulling on you and they want to go see the dog, and they don't understand. You can't do that. They don't know the rules. And they figure it out, but if you can just get them to touch noses just for that long before a visit, solve the problem. And so we all kind of figured that out. So you have to do it in secret though, because they can't be seen together, and they're working. So it's all business when they're out there to do their therapy dog role. So you have to figure things out. Otherwise, you're out fighting all that. They just want to be friends. So yeah, dogs are like people.
Off record, I guess.
That's right. That's right. In secret, off record. That's right.
So they may be having a reunion this fall.
I've heard a little bit about that. Yeah. They're also doing a big event, a big fundraising event that is just in the works right now. I haven't heard all the details. And so yeah, they're seeking some nice donations. Anything that someone wants to donate, I'm sure would be welcome, but I think they're wanting some sizable donations to raise some serious money for the program. So that'll be fun. And they may tie the reunion into that. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I would love it. I would love it if the dogs could be there. I would love it if the dogs were chosen not to be there. I'll support it, whatever I can. So I hope that I'm here and can participate in that, just so I can see everyone's faces. It'll just, some of these people I haven't seen, a couple of years, and so it'd be fun. I would love that. Yeah. Always good to get back together with people you've, shared life with.
Yeah, 10 years went by pretty fast, I guess, too, didn't it?
I cannot believe it's been 10 years. That blows my mind. I feel like it was yesterday that it was Charlie and me and Kendra and the trainer Alyssa walking around campus trying to learn how to heel. I can still remember doing that, and that does not seem like that's been 10 years. A lot of life has happened in 10 years, and that sure doesn't seem possible. Yeah.
Did they want to get into the fountain?
Not so much. And I think maybe Charlie. But Evie's not a big water dog. She never was one for a bath or, all that stuff. She would do it because she had to. But Charlie pretty much does whatever he likes. He has a pool at his house and he likes to get in and do stuff. But, I don't think any of the dogs have been in the fountain intentionally. Now, they may have chased something in there. Now, Evie would go to Theta Pond and want to chase the squirrels up the tree. And sometimes I let her do that, depended on who was watching. But, she was a dog that was a working dog does. She was part Border Collie, and they chase critters, and so it was kind of fun watching her do her thing. But I didn't let her do it all the time. But man, that was her joy, was chasing those squirrels. So sometimes you just kind of depend, see who's watching, and then you do what you can. But they're still dogs. They're working, but they're still dogs. Yeah, got to give them a little joy too.
They get to ride in the front seat going home.
As long as they're buckled in, you can do whatever you want, but you got to keep them buckled in and safe. So that was part of our rules. You have to make sure your dog is safe, and either in a crate in your vehicle, or they have to be buckled in so that they don't go flying. Should something unexpected happen, you got to have them safe. And so when you got a big dog, that's a lot. So those of us that had big dogs, it was a little harder for us to maneuver. But yeah.
Could they ride with the window down?
Yes, and you'll see them. And you would always Evie every time if we would leave campus, unless it was the dead of winter. We would roll the window down. Her harness in the car had enough give where she could stick her nose out the window, and that's all she needed to do. And it was probably good because she would see a bird or a squirrel like at a stoplight, and she would have jumped out the window if she had not been harnessed in there. But yeah, she always could. And you'll see a lot of the dogs when they're on campus. You'll see them sticking their heads out the window at the end of a long day. So yeah, I always let her do that. She's still a dog, they still like to do dog things. So, but we had to keep them harnessed in so they're safe. Yeah,
a lot of good memories.
Very good memories. It was the time of my life, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Have I not asked something that I need to ask?
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot. There's a lot to cover. So,
and shed happens.
Shed happens. You got to be really cautious how you say that, right?
Yes. Yes. Say that 3 times.
Yeah. I can only do it slowly. Yeah.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'll ask my last question. How do you want people to remember you?
Oh, in relation to this program, or just in general?
In general.
That I cared about people. I mean, the work that I do is because I want to see people succeed. And as part of this program, because I wanted to succeed, but I saw the value, how we could demonstrate that we cared about people, whether they were visitors, students, staff, faculty, whatever their role was, what brought them to this campus. I wanted them to feel cared for, and I think this program helps people feel like they matter. And so I'm just so honored to be a part of it, and I hope that that's how people see that she cared. That's really what I want.
Okay. Yeah. Mission accomplished from where I sit.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Well, this was a joy. I appreciate y'all including me.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.